We welcome Steve O'Donnell, NASCAR Senior Vice President. Steve, I understand you're here to give us a little update today. Welcome.
Thanks, Christy, and appreciate everyone being here. I wanted to give everyone an update from last Saturday's accident in Daytona. You know, first and foremost, obviously our thoughts and prayers continue to be with those who are injured. Most, if not all, have been released. And I think you all have heard from Halifax Health that 2 remaining patients in the hospital, but we're optimistic on their release as well. As everybody knows, you know, safety is first and foremost for not only NASCAR and our racetracks, but getting that right and making sure that our fans can enjoy the most safe and entertaining environment possible. And I think our history speaks to that. But moving forward, based on what happened in Daytona, we met immediately with the folks at Daytona International Speedway. We've had multiple meetings this week. It's been a truly collaborative effort. With the goal of doing really 2 things, is obviously looking at what happened in this incident, but more importantly the go forward plan of what we can learn and what we want to implement as we go forward. So a couple updates on where we're at to date. The 32 car and the parts have obviously been secured by NASCAR. Unlike other incidents where just a car and a driver was involved, and we immediately bring that car back to the R&D center. In this case, that car remained in Daytona. The purpose of that was to allow the folks from Daytona and their experts to take a look at the car, see what, if anything, they could glean from that investigation and apply that to their initial thoughts looking at the fencing. The car is in the process of being brought up to the R&D center, and that'll involve a couple of things that we're going to look at. The first step for us, you know, as we reviewed it prior to going to the R&D center, I think important to note that most of the safety elements that are in that car did their job. So the drivers, as you saw, walked away. However, the car then got up into the fence. So our focus is going to be, if the elements in the car did their job, now what do we need to do in looking at the impact to the fence, what happened once that car impacted the fence with parts getting away. So once the car gets up to the R&D center, we've got a number of experts there who will do a few things first and foremost. First, we'll bring in the race team. That car was impounded, so the team has not had a chance to look at the car. And why that's important to us is we want to bring in that team and talk about how the car was constructed, how it was fabricated, what we can learn jointly as they look at the car and apply what we see as well. The next steps will be putting that car back together, and we'll use any and all technology we can use, video, cameras. The benefit to us in this situation is that if you look at Daytona and all the camera angles and all the video technology that's out there, we've got the most technology we've ever had to be able to apply to this incident. So we're going to use that and apply that and hopefully learn from that as well. We'll go through each part of the car. Want to look at how everything held up that was in the car, the cockpit, the tethers. There's been talk of did the tethers break apart or not. They did not. However, when you look at the car, obviously the part that the car was tethered to, you know, sheared the car. So that's something that we've got to look at in advance of. You know, we've tethered a number of different things as we've learned and added things to the safety aspects of the car. But what do we need to do in addition to that when we look at this accident specifically? We're also going to bring in outside experts. I think everyone's familiar with us working with Dr. Dean Sicking. We have a partnership with Indianapolis Motor Speedway where the Safer Barriers came together, so we'll obviously enlist both of those parties as part of this process. But I think it's important to note too that looking at fencing and outside engineering is going to be a third aspect that we're going to have to apply in conjunction with all of those folks. So we use the best and brightest, and we'll enlist those folks going forward, and we think it'll also either validate our findings and provide a peer review that we can go to. Concurrently with all this, Daytona International Speedways looking at the fencing, bringing in their experts, and they're also in the process of bringing in an outside firm to analyze what was in place and look to what we may need to do going forward. Really a 2-phase process that we're looking at. Super Speedway racing with Daytona and Talladega is going to be the first concentration for us. We've got a race coming up in May at Talladega, so anything we can learn in the immediate future that can be applied to Talladega, we'll do that. The second phase is all of our racetracks. We race on a number of different facilities, as you all know. Each of those tracks is unique. different speeds, different banking. All those factors need to be thought through as you look to make any changes that may be recommended. So first and foremost, it'll be Talladega. So no set timetable as to when this will be completed, other than the fact that we know that the race is coming up in May. So anything we can do will apply in May. But when you talk about safety, I think Jeff Burton said it best yesterday. You know, there's no goal of safety or no end goal of safety. It's something we work on each and every day. So same with this process. If there's something we can find out tonight, we'll apply that. If it's 2 months from now, we'll apply that as well. So no set timetable, but rest assured that we'll be back to you quickly as we find results and things we can implement. 3 other things I just wanted to quickly touch on that are obviously topics that are out there. Michael Annett was injured in a crash at Daytona, an injury that we have not seen for some time now. So we're going to look through that car. Happy to report that Michael went through surgery and is released, but that's something that we've got to take a hard look at and make sure that all the things that were in place worked for Michael, and anything we can improve on, we will. The story that's out there about Jeremy Clements. No secret, we did suspend Jeremy. We believe strongly that we made the right move there. I think our go-forward plan with Jeremy is to quickly engage Dr. Richard Lapchick, have Jeremy work with Dr. Richard Lapchick, and get him back in the race car as soon as possible and as soon as we deem fit. And last but not least, I think, don't want it to be forgotten that this is the first true test of the Gen 6 car. Like the feedback, and Robin's put in a heck of a lot of work towards the car. This race and next week in Las Vegas are obviously going to be great indicators of where we're at. We're getting some great feedback from the drivers. So we're excited about what we're going to see today, obviously with 2 races, but even more importantly tomorrow. So with that, I'll take any questions anybody may have.
Okay, we'll open it up for questions. For Steve, please raise your hand. We'll get a wireless mic to you. Please state your name and affiliation. We'll start down here on the front with Mike.
I'm Mike Hembry, Speed.com. Steve, I know you have a lot of work to do with the fencing and all, but let me ask you about a couple of things that have been mentioned. Some sort of plastic apparatus to cover the fencing to supposedly prevent debris from going through. And there's also been a mention, particularly at Daytona and Talladega, of possibly removing some seating rows and having, in effect, double fencing in the grandstand areas, two barriers. What are you thinking on those without knowing all the facts and figures?
I think the last part of your question is really the contributing factor. I think really far too early. We've got to do the investigation and do it right. We don't want to come to a quick conclusion that doesn't bring in every factor that contributed to this incident. So there are certainly a number of suggestions out there. I think we'll look at any and all of them. But to do this right, we've got to take the time to reconstruct the car, reconstruct the fence, reconstruct the accident, and then go out and say, okay, here's what we know happened, and now what would prevent that moving forward.
Okay, we'll take our next question up front from Reed.
With NASCAR Wire Service. This may be premature also, but both Rick Hendrick and Roger Penske said after the wreck that they'd never seen a front clip sheared off a car like that in an accident. Anything with the preliminary examination of the car that suggests why that might have happened?
I think, again, still early as the car's just getting to the R&D center. I can tell you that specific focus really on the gate and placements of gates I think we'll look at, particularly as it pertains to Talladega. But still early. That's part of the process where we bring the team in and talk about car construction and then bring our experts, Tom Gideon, John Padillac, to look at that in tandem with the team and see what might have happened.
Okay, our next question we'll take from Lewis Frank.
Lewis Frank from Auto Week. Is it possible that restrictor plates, be open to discussion? Because some of the drivers said if we have, in general, by the way, both in Cup and in Nationwide, if we had some more horsepower to do more passing, we might change the nature of the pack. So my question is are restrictor plates, the issue of restrictor plates, open for further discussion in the safety review?
I think as part of the review, we'll look at everything, Lewis, but I think it's important to note that we've raced there for 55 years. We've had a number of safe races. Hopeful that this is a one-time incident. So that's kind of the tact we'll take. We certainly will not rule anything out as we go into it, but we're comfortable continuing to race at Talladega and Daytona with restrictor plates.
We'll take a question from Stan, then Jim, then back to David.
Hi, Stan Creekmore with RPMtonight.com, Steve. You mentioned in the Michael Annett situation looking at the car and everything. Will you also look at his health, and could that possibly have some effect in how NASCAR looks at drivers before the start of a season, what they require to make sure that they're not susceptible to those, or less susceptible to those types of injuries?
I think it's probably important to kind of review of what we require prior to every season. Each driver passes a complete physical and lets us know of their health and safety. Our medical liaisons have complete files on every one of our drivers going into a race, so we would not allow someone to race who we thought was not fit to race. I think what will be helpful with this is knowing the process we have in place and the people we have in place with the liaison team, with our doctors panel. I think we're in a better position than ever to work with Michael, talk about what happened, what he experienced, and the recovery phase, and make sure we're in tandem, and we'll certainly learn from that. We've learned from every incident we've had. It's never something we want to go through, but I think each time we've learned something new to be able to apply either to the race car or the driver safety system.
Okay, next question from Jim.
Jim Peltz, LA Times. Steve, have you confirmed whether the tire on Larson's car went through the fence or over the fence?
We believe, again, Jim, at everything we've seen is it went through. When you look at that car and the way it pivoted going into the fence, all 4 tires are on there. We think it would be impossible for the tire to then come back and go back over the fence. So everything we've seen so far says that it went through that gate area. I wouldn't, completely rule it out until we look at every piece of video, but all of our initial reactions, including from those from the R&D Center, that it went through.
Okay, we'll take our next question from David.
David Caravella, NASCAR.com. Steve, you mentioned outside experts like Dr. Sicking in Indianapolis Motor Speedway. How can they help you in areas of fencing, and are there such things as fencing experts in situations like this?
There are, and I'll take the second part first. Daytona is a good example. In 2009, experts and engineers, outside engineers, put that fence together, and the way that's done is by taking the data that we can provide on the cars, the speeds, impacts, past crashes that we've had, and the fences are built based on that and based on those loads, based on the weight of our cars. And so it's kind of a all-in-one. And so if you look at the history of safety, where walls evolved, where the car has been safer, where we've put new foam in, now that next evolution is the fence. But it's all kind of part and parcel because our cars are unique. If you look at a Formula One car versus a NASCAR vehicle, you could say, well, employ some of the things that Formula One does. Car weighs half and their fencing is half. So when we look at it, it's going to be in totality of how's the car react to the wall. If the car gets into the fence, what's that load that it can take, and having those experts as part of that panel to review it, we think will really just add that much more. And there are a lot of engineering firms out there. Some of it, I'll tell you, is very new. There's a lot of ideas out there, but I think it's a great time to be able to bring all the experts together and look at this.
Okay, we'll take our next question up front from Terry, then go back to Bob.
Steve, can you confirm that the only 2 people left at Halifax are the 2 that were critically injured? Everyone else has been released, to your knowledge?
Everyone else has been released. There's 2 people still remaining at Halifax.
Okay, we'll take our next question in the back from Bob, and then go up to the back row to Kim.
Bob Hocker, Sporting News. Are you going to? Did you say that you're going to actually try to do a reconstruction of the entire crash, and who would you enlist to help you with that?
I think the first part of that, Bob, will be a reconstruction of the parts and pieces back on that car using video evidence to see when things came off, having the team work together with Tom Gideon to look at how the car was constructed, time that with video and try and reenact what happened to the car, and then take some of that data, provide it to the Speedway, and look at how that may match up with what they found with their investigation of the fence as well.
Okay, we'll take our next question from Kim.
Kim Novak, Speed. When on the fencing updates with the tracks, when NASCAR works with the tracks, how exactly and specifically do they? Like, is there a list of safety requirements that NASCAR presents to the tracks? And if so, what are the items on that list?
I think it's a joint process. So if you take a track inspection in general, NASCAR meets in January with all the tracks and goes through all the latest technology and new safety enhancements that can be brought to a track, and we work together. We come in, we do advanced inspections of all the facilities that we race at. That would include walls, fencing, historically, the tracks have been responsible for the actual fencing, but obviously we're going to look and make sure that we're comfortable with what's in place. We took that tact with safer barriers where we implemented those. So there's a long process that starts preseason, then an advance process that happens where we come to the race in advance, and then every morning, probably before everyone gets here, we've got folks who've walked this track and looked at it. And tonight, if anyone's around at 8 o'clock, we'll have the same folks doing it in conjunction with the track.
Okay, final two questions. We'll go to Michael and then up to Jeff.
Michael Knight, Arizona Republic. Steve, are you aware of any fan inquiries to any NASCAR tracks, either to the ticket office or the offices in general, expressing concern about coming out to races in the aftermath of Daytona?
I am not.
Okay, final question. Jeff, right here in the middle.
Jeff Gluck from USA Today. Steve, you talked about the focus on the gate area. Is it fair to say that you believe that the way that the car went in and hit the gate played a major role in what happened, and that if it had hit at another part of the fence, it may have been a different outcome? I mean, is that why there's the focus on the gate area?
I think still too early, Jeff, but I think because of where it hit and it having pieces that did get through and it being a gate area, I think that's really going to be the focus for us. And we'll certainly look at fencing in general, but I think that particular area, having, the fact that it is a gate, did that impact it? We know the gate was locked, we know it was secure, but does that provide as much stability as the rest of the fencing? We believed it did, but we've got to now take a look at that based on this impact.